What would it be like to wake up in the morning knowing you had a queue of high-paying clients lining up for your design services? In this video, I'm going to break down my proven 3-step process that my design agency clients have been using to land 6-figure projects consistently. Once you master this system, you won't ever have to worry about those clients that beat you down on price ever again. So let's get into it. So let's have a look at the framework. These 3 pillars join together, and if you miss the first one, the other 2 become quite difficult, and they sort of work in a clockwise motion. Having coached hundreds of creative business owners over the last 8 years and run an agency myself, I know that it's really easy to feel overwhelmed. Often it seems like there's a million and one things that we have to do, and there's lots of different people telling us lots of different strategies. And so in this video, my aim is to simplify this as much as possible for you. In my experience, these are the only 3 things that you really need to worry about if you want to consistently land 6-figure projects. Let's look at the first pillar over here on the left. Now, if you get this wrong, it's going to be very difficult to utilize the other strategies that I'm going to talk about today. And you might have experienced getting this wrong yourself. How many projects or jobs have you ever lost to the competition? Whether it's because they were cheaper than you or they had more experience than you, whatever the reason, how many times has that happened to you? How many times has it felt like a race to the bottom where all you can compete on is price and all the client seems to care about is price? Well, if that's happening to you, then this first pillar is probably why. If you get this right, it will genuinely feel like you don't have any competition and clients will start to pay you pretty much whatever you ask. So, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about this idea that really, if we want to win 6-figure projects with our ideal clients, we have to find a way to differentiate ourselves from the competition. And what does that really mean? What does differentiating yourself actually look like? So for me and a lot of our clients, it's really about standing out from the competition and kind of being the go-to agency or studio for your ideal clients. So they're not really thinking about anybody else. They're just thinking about you. And if we're going to do this, there are some key fundamental principles that we need to understand. So let me ask you a question. I want you to genuinely think about right now, what makes you or your agency different? And just maybe write down some of the things that come to mind initially. When I've done this with creative businesses before, they've said things to me like, it's our experience. It's the style that we have. We make films in a particular style, or we design things in a particular style that other people don't. It's the unique process that we have. It's our attention to detail or how our customers feel when we work with them, all these kind of things. And maybe that's something that you've written down. Maybe it's something slightly different. There's a test to know whether these things actually differentiate you from the competition or not. And that test is to ask yourself, could my competitors claim these things? And you might even want to look on their website. Do they use these kind of terms, the things that you've just written down? Could somebody else say that the things that I've just written down are also the things that make them different? If the answer to that question is yes, then do they really make you different? Is that really unique? Or are they just things that you do well that keep your current clients happy? So I learned this concept or this idea from Daniel Priestley that we're all standing on a mountain of value. His book, Key Person of Influence, talks a lot about this in the first few chapters. And when I went through this process myself, what I realized is that Daniel is talking about this idea that everything that has happened to us up until this point is uniquely valuable. So when I think about what makes people different, I'm really looking under the surface of the iceberg. So up here at the top, the thing that everybody's shouting about, their process, the clients they've worked with, all of these things, these are the stuff that we're trying to put on the surface for other people to see. But really, the gold the things that actually differentiate us are usually beneath the surface, and we often don't even see them ourselves because we're too close to them. So some examples here, things that you might not think are relevant: your hobbies, the things that you geek out on in your spare time, the people that you know in your network, right? How many times have you said to a client or thought to a client, actually, the unique combination of people that I know is really valuable. The people that I call on, whether they are other freelancers or whether they are mentors or people you've learned from, or maybe just friends that you've got. Nobody else has the same combination of people in their network that you do, right? The experiences that you've had, the places that you've been, your story, what got you here, your worldview, the books you've read, the courses, we could go on and on and on. But these are all the things that are really unique to you. And it's not just these things in isolation as individual pieces, it's the combination of these things that make you unique. And if you think about it, nobody else has this exact combination as you. Your unique combination is the thing that differentiates you from everybody else. And I want to talk to you about some examples. So this is Eric and Lucas, and they run Studio Hairstrom. And when they first came to us, they were a successful studio. They're working on some cool projects, but the projects were quite diverse. And one of the things that they were struggling to do was make the transition from freelance to a fully fledged studio. Going through this process, which I'm about to tell you a bit more detail around, allowed them to win a project 7 times bigger than anything else they had ever won. And so for Eric and Lucas, they now focus down on the music and tech space, the kind of convergence between those two. So they've got clients like Spotify, like Sony Music. They recently rebranded Elvis and Whitney Houston. They're working on some really cool things. And they're now the go-to branding agency in that space. Another example, like Sergey. Now, Sergey works with education businesses, and this isn't just something that he's pulled out of the air. We looked at all of the things underneath Sergey's iceberg. We looked at all of the things that make him unique, and he's got a really cool story. Sergey's actually from Ukraine originally, and he now lives in Canada. And his story is all about his experience learning English and his experiences in school, growing up, learning. And this is one of the reasons that he now works with online education businesses, because it's his unique combination that puts him in a position to solve a problem for those people. And then what we do is we put these key themes into a bit of a wheel, right? And this is often referred to as things like your zone of genius. So if we look at Eric, for example, things that came from that were music, technology, design, creativity, all of these different things. And they were pointing in the middle towards a specific person or a specific industry that had a problem that Eric and his business was in a unique position to solve. And this is what we do with every single client. And it's beautiful because that means you're not just picking a niche out of thin air and you're not just saying, hey, I'm going to position myself here. It's actually based on your unique experiences. It's based on things that only you can say or tell or communicate, because you're not just making it up. These are real world things that actually happen to you. So that's pillar number 1, differentiate, being able to stand out in a highly competitive market. Stop being invited to pitches, stop pitching against other agencies, and be a market of one. Don't keep trying to be the best, be the only. Let's talk about pillar number 2. Now, this is really a segue into differentiate. So you can know that, there's nobody else like you and you have all these unique things that you offer. But if you can't communicate that effectively, then what tends to happen is you have these conversations with clients where they just don't see the value of what you do. And so you might think, branding is really important, branding is really valuable, but the client just sees it as a nice to have. And you kind of got 2 options in that instance. You either decline the project because they don't have the budget and just hope that something else comes along, or you have to lower your prices and try and make the project work. And that just doesn't feel great for us. And usually it doesn't really allow that project to flow smoothly. And it's never generally a good outcome either for us or for the client. And so if we can't communicate effectively, if we can't communicate the value of what we do effectively, we're always coming up against that blocker, that obstacle of price. And if you want to win 6-figure projects or even multiple 5-figure projects, you've got to get really, really good at articulating and communicating the value of what you do. And when you do that, clients just get it. They're like, oh, I get this. I understand the value. I see this. They treat you like a creative partner rather than just a worker. Hey, we need this logo. Can you design some cool things for us? They actually see you as a creative problem solver. So the second pillar is all around how we communicate our unique value. Once we've uncovered that value, how do we communicate it to our ideal clients so that we get treated like a creative partner and get paid what we deserve? One of the easiest ways to gain more traction and to eradicate this inconsistency is to be more active. Now, when I say that to creative business owners, they all pull a funny face, which basically says, I don't want to do that. And I think this guy is to blame. If anyone's seen Wolf of Wall Street, you'll know this idea. Jordan Belfort, sell me this pen. I think sales and active communication has got a bad rep because so many people have sold to us poorly, and it's made us feel really uncomfortable, and it's made us think that's what sales is. But I want to show you something, and I want to show you a technique that will allow you to be more active in your communication without being salesy and without feeling spammy and without being that person who's just sell, sell, sell. So before I do that, you've got to understand how humans make decisions about a considered purchase. And so the research suggests that there's kind of 6 parts to a decision or the decision-making process. And you've probably been through these yourself. You start at stage 1 where you don't really think that you have a problem, or you're kind of satisfied with the current solution. Then something happens and you become aware that you need to change. So let's take like buying a new phone as an example. Maybe you're happy with your phone, but then you drop it and the screen cracks, right? You become aware, oh no, I've got a problem. I can't see my phone properly. Then a lot of people, myself included, will kind of tolerate that cracked screen for a while. It's just about all right. And then maybe it gets a little bit worse. And we're aware there's a problem, but we haven't actually yet committed mentally to fix that problem and decide to take action. And that's kind of stage 3, right? We say enough is enough. I don't want to walk around with a cracked phone screen anymore. I'm going to go out and I'm going to fix this. And we look at what are the options. Well, how much is it going to cost me to get a new screen? Should I maybe just upgrade the phone? Am I actually really happy with this iPhone, or do I want to switch to Android? And we start researching, we start assessing our options. Once we've done that to the point where we feel comfortable making a decision, we do the thing, we buy the screen, we upgrade the phone, and then weirdos like me, you buy the thing and then you go back onto YouTube or the reviews and you keep watching them just to make sure that you've made the right decision, right? This is how most of us buy. Now, the problem is when I say to people, hey, be more active, what they do is they go out there and they want to talk to people at stage 4. This seems most logical. It seems like, hey, if somebody out there is thinking about doing a rebrand, I want to speak to them. The problem is stage 4 are one of the smallest markets out there. So the research suggests that maybe only 6 to 12% of the entire market, the addressable market out there, is at stage 4, i.e. assessing options. And think about when you're at that stage, what are some of the criteria that you're using to decide who you should buy from? Most people are predominantly using the criteria of time, price, and quality. How quickly can I get this thing? How much is it going to cost? And is it any good? Right? So we're kind of in this space when we're communicating with people at stage 4, where it's one of the smallest markets. The only things that we can adjust are time, price, and quality. And if you think about it, that's where everybody else is trying to get the attention. It's one of the most competitive markets. Get to the top of Google. You can witness this yourself if you've ever seen one of those posts on social media. Hey, do you know anyone who's great at branding? And within 5 minutes, there's like 100 recommendations. That is stage 4. That's what stage 4 is like. So what do you think would happen if we were actively communicating, but instead of communicating with people at stage 4, we were communicating with them at stage 1 or stage 2, and we were helping them to get to stage 4. We were helping them to assess the options, and we were helping them to actually make the right decisions based on their problem. Well, I can tell you what happens based on some of the experiences that my clients have had, and they are incredible results. So I'm just going to skip through a couple of slides. Like Amanda. Amanda is an illustrator and a branding studio. And it was amazing because when she was working with us, she came to us at a revenue range of about 50 to 60K, which is a little bit lower than we usually accept people to work with us. But I could see Amanda's potential, and we took her on as a client. And in less than 12 months, her revenue was over 200,000, from 55 to 200,000. And one of the biggest drivers for that was this 6-figure project that she won. And the reason she was able to do that is because she became aware of this decision-making process, and she used something that we teach called the one-page sales system. And she was really able to uncover that client's problem and take them on that journey to demonstrate the value. This works as well. I'm using Will and Ryan from Press Record. I'm talking about film now because I want you to see that this actually works for multiple different disciplines, not just for design clients. So these were some numbers that they threw out in terms of their largest proposals, because they really started reaching out, getting really active, reaching out to people, but getting them at the right stage. So the question then becomes, okay, Matt, how do we get people at stage 1 and 2 instead of stage 4 if this is what it results in? And the idea is quite simple, but maybe slightly more difficult to implement. And the idea is to actually stop talking about your services. So don't keep going out into the world saying, hey, we're a branding agency. Does anyone want branding? Because people at stage 1 and 2 aren't thinking about branding. It's only people at stage 4 that are really thinking about branding. So instead, we want to go out into the market and we want to talk about symptoms. Okay, so what are people experiencing? That's what people at stage 1 and 2 will connect with, their experience, not the end product that you're selling. And this is one of the fundamental shifts that our clients make that really changes their gear and allows them to start winning those higher value clients and higher value projects. So what does that look like in practical terms? It looks like becoming a guide. It looks like not just being a pixel pusher, it looks like being a creative partner. And one of the ways that we can take people from stage 1 and 2 by connecting with them and moving them through that process is by something that I have been practicing for a long time, which is to be able to articulate their problems better than they can. So I had this great phrase a while ago, and I'm really sorry to whoever said it because I can't remember who it was, but they said to me, when you can articulate your client's problems better than they can, you then get permission to solve them. And that's always stuck with me. I've always thought to myself, how can I continuously articulate things in a way that people understand and haven't been able to articulate themselves? And that is really the process that we're talking about here. Connecting with people at stage 1 and 2 and bringing them to stage 4 is the thing that allows you to position yourself as a problem solver and position yourself as high value. So I will tell you the system that I developed in order to do that. And I call it the insight formula. This took me a while to work out, but it works. This is what we teach all of our clients. So people at stage 1 and 2 are focused on the symptom, okay? They know what they're experiencing. So it's the difference between understanding that you have a headache and not knowing why, like you're aware of the symptom, versus getting to the point where you figured out why you have a headache and you now want to go and buy new glasses because you know that's what's causing the problem, or you want to go and buy a paracetamol. Okay, we don't want to advertise the glasses because those people don't know they need glasses yet. We want to advertise to the symptom. Okay, so think about yourself like a doctor. So what are they experiencing right now? Then the second part is, what do they assume about that thing? Okay, so if you're in branding, maybe the symptom they're experiencing right now is they're getting low engagement on social media, or they're getting inquiries, but people are a little bit confused when they come to them about exactly what they do. And they're having to spend a long time on sales calls explaining what they do to people. And that's the symptom they're experiencing. What's the assumption? Well, they might assume that people just don't understand their product well enough because they haven't communicated it in their copy, or because they are bad at sales, or some of these things. And the more you call these assumptions out, the easier it is for you to get this person's attention and build their trust, because they're like, oh, actually, that is exactly what I was thinking. Once you've done that, you then highlight the problem to them. It's like, it's not about your messaging. The real problem is that you don't actually know your ideal client well enough to be able to articulate the things that they are struggling with, or your brand is inconsistent and therefore it's confusing people. And then you can present a solution. Okay. So this works with pretty much any industry, and there's a skill to it and there's a knack to it. But once you get it, it really works. And once you can do this consistently, you will be able to position yourself as a creative partner. The best way to find this information and the best way to do this is to have as many conversations as possible and really just listen. What are people's beliefs about the symptoms that they're currently experiencing? Why do they think they are experiencing these symptoms? And then you can start to fill in these gaps, and then you can start to challenge some of this thinking. So that's part 2, how we're able to communicate the value of what we do effectively. It's about being more active with our communication, and it's about communicating at the right stage of that buying process by switching your services, what you sell, for the symptoms, what your client is experiencing. So let's talk about the final pillar, deliver. Often when I talk to clients about this idea of landing a 6-figure project or a 6-figure client, they get worried because they feel like it's going to be more stress for them. Like, oh God, how are we going to deliver that? Or that sounds like a lot of work. Every project requires these big complex proposals, and would I have to deliver 10 times the amount of work? And I don't know if our team can handle that, and all of these things. And if you get this part wrong, that can very easily happen, and it can very easily lead to burnout. So this final pillar is really important. Once you've been able to differentiate yourself against somebody else and communicate the value of what you do, and you actually get to the point where you're going to get that project across the line, it's really important to master this so you don't burn yourself out. And you can actually do what Eric did from Studio Hairstrom, which is take a month out of his business and come back and everything still be running fine because he had this pillar in place. The key concept, the key idea that I really want to share with you here is we want to overcome objections with outcomes. And what I mean by that specifically is we have to understand as creative service providers that people aren't really buying branding. They're not really buying the thing that we sell or the skill set that we've built. What they're buying is they're buying an end result. They're buying the thing that they think branding or design is going to get them. And the more we can understand that, and the more we can understand specifically what that outcome is that they are trying to achieve, the easier it's going to be for us to deliver that project in a way that blows them out of the water, that doesn't cause more stress for us, that doesn't overwhelm our team. So I like to think about these 2 islands when I'm speaking to clients and when I'm educating people around this process. I've spoken about this before, but I think about these 2 islands. Island A is where they are now, and Island B is where they're trying to get to. This is kind of the future. Now, I know this is kind of basic stuff, but not enough people spend the time to really understand the desired future state of their ideal clients. It's not, we want a new brand. That's not their desired future state. It's what they think that new brand will get them. And in this process of speaking to the client and communicating your value, understanding that outcome, that desired future state, is one of the most important parts. And the reason it's one of the most important parts is because the more confident you are that you can help them achieve that, the easier it will be for you to get them as a client, and the easier it will be for you to create case studies to get more of those kind of clients. So the question that I ask myself and our clients when I'm thinking about these two islands and this desired future state is, once they tell me what they want, the client wants, the question then becomes, if I only got paid once I help them deliver that result, what are all of the things that I would need to do to feel confident that I was going to get paid? I'll say that again. Once I know that outcome, if I was only going to get paid when I help that client deliver the outcome, what are all of the things, all of the steps in the process, all of the things that I would need to do with them, and all of the things that they would need to have in place for me to feel confident that I was going to get paid? Or said another way, for me to feel confident that I was going to get that end result. And this informs your process. We talk about unpacking your intellectual property. This is really about getting all of that stuff out of your head, how you create results for clients, how you get them to where they want to be, and making sure that is down on paper, it's documented, it's put into something that you and your team and everybody around you can actually understand. And it's not just kept up here where most of our ideas are kept. And this process can feel quite strange because it's a little bit like, for those of you that drive stick, as you say in the States, but drive a manual car like we say in the UK, you'll know that when you first started learning to do that, it felt like there was a million and one things to do. I have to change gear, I have to put the clutch out, I have to look in my rear view mirror, I have to turn the steering wheel, all of these different things happening at once, and it just felt totally overwhelming. But eventually you learn, and you got to the point where you didn't think about those things, it just happened subconsciously. So once you've been driving for a period of years, if someone said to you, can you explain to me how you drive this car? What are the steps? As you were doing it, it would feel really weird and uncomfortable because it's all happened. It's a subconscious process. And this is what's happening for most of us as creatives. We spend so many years mastering our craft. We just get really good at what we do. And someone says to you, well, how do you design a logo? Or how do you rebrand someone? And you kind of like, well, I've got this process roughly that's like discovery and then design and then concept. And it's all kind of a bit generic, but like, what are the actual steps in the process of getting this person from A to B? And that's your intellectual property. That's how you get clients' results. And it links to your differentiation, because the way that you do this will be slightly different to the way somebody else does this, because they don't have the same things underneath that iceberg that you do. So let's quickly talk about Daniel. When Daniel did this process, he came up with something really cool called the unfair advantage. And this became his branding process. The unfair advantage was the outcome that he was promising his clients. And to get them an unfair advantage, to help them stand out in the market, there were some specific steps that he took people through. And as a result of this, he was able to increase his rates by over 200%. And Daniel is now one of our clients that is in the six-figure project club. This was an incredible thing for Daniel because he started to really understand the power of getting obsessed with the outcome, not just the process. Jay and Andy run a film production studio, and in 12 months, they were able to double their revenue, but more importantly, they were able to actually free up more time. So by doing this, by going through this process, they were able to free up more time than they had before. So they had less clients and more time, which meant that they could work on passion projects. So we have to understand that clients are actually buying a result, and we need to sell that result. We need to package that result, swap our services with products. So I'm curious, out of those three, which one would you say is your weakest point right now? Because this is a clockwise process, and these three things all work together. You have to be able to do them all together in order for this to get you the kind of clients that you want to get at those project rates. I would love to know in the comments below, what were your biggest insights from this video? And speaking of insights, how many of you have ever watched a video or read a book and you got loads and loads of ideas, loads of insights, loads of things popping off in your mind? You took loads and loads of notes and you were like, I'm going to do this in my business, I'm going to do that in my business. And then you found that notebook full of notes in a drawer about 6 months later and you realized you had done absolutely nothing with it. If you answered yes to that, you are very much like me. I did that for years and years and years. I went to hundreds of seminars. I spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds on coaches and mentors and courses, had all these insights. I thought to myself, how do I turn these insights into income? And over the years, I have found a bit of a formula. You've probably guessed by now that I like the power of threes. And so I just want to leave you with something. If you're watching this video, I want to leave you with my insight to income formula. How do we take these ideas and actually make sure they make us more money, not just give us more knowledge? So today we talked about the strategy, right? That's doing the right thing at the right time. And by the way, you can do the right thing at the wrong time and not get the result you want. So it's really important that we've got a strategy that gets us the right thing at the right time. But if it was just enough to watch the video, to read the book, then we would all be exactly where we want to be in business. So we also need support. We need people to be able to see things objectively, see things that we can't see. We need someone to be able to turn to when some of these strategies inevitably don't work, or we've implemented them in slightly the wrong way. How do we make sure that we're implementing these strategies in the right way? How do we have someone to hold us accountable to doing these things? And then finally, we need systems in place to actually measure whether this thing is working or not. If you're not tracking how many proposals you sent out, if you don't know how many people you've reached out to, if you don't measure all of these things, how do we know what's working and what we need to change? And so there's lots of ways that you can get this, but you really need these three things in your business. There are some great resources below. There's the Futur Pro group, the Accelerator, which I highly recommend you checking out, which gives you all of these three things. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like some one-to-one support, I currently have 3 spaces left to support people implementing the system that we've just been through. There's a link below. You can click on that and you can apply to work with me. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got value from today. If you did, please let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget, if you're not subscribed to this incredible channel, hit that subscribe button and you won't miss the valuable content that is here. Thanks for watching. My name is Matt Essam and you've been watching The Futur.